So we'll continue with a Russian political analyst, Andrey Piontkovsky from Washington. He's with us. Hello, Alexei. Let's start with the current state of Russia today. Recently, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia, they were saying this hysteria of sanctions will not do any good to us. Now they're saying that all the logistical chains are broken. And Zelensky is saying that Russia is throwing everything it has to this war. Don't you think this is the point when we need to attack and stop Russia? Finally. Well, actually, we can feel it in Russia as well. They are using extreme means. We can see that they, over the last days, they mobilized all the agents abroad. They're exposing such agents that you wouldn't think they have. And the battle cry of this whole campaign was made by President Macron on the 9th of May when he said, "Don't humiliate Russia." And so this goes on, and I can read similar articles everywhere in the West. It seems that they were all written based on the same playbook. And we can see that the source of this campaign is located in Lubyanka in Moscow, in KGB, and the theme of it is "Don't corner the rat. The consequences will be terrible. Let's make peace with Russia." And also they covered up saying that they're taking care of poor Ukrainians who are bombed by Russia. So we need to stop military actions and start bilateral negotiations between Russia and Ukraine on the disputable territories. And here I'm not being ironic, I'm not making anything up. I'm quoting the articles. I'm not quoting the articles of commentators, but here this is the official proposal of Italian government. And actually this is the program of Italy, France, and Germany. And the program says the following. The first point is to cease fire, and it's good. Second, Ukraine should declare some sort of neutral status. But this is nonsense. So neutral status about what? Ukraine is waged a war against by Russia, and Ukraine is supposed to declare a neutral status in the war. This is really abusing common sense and the fight that Ukraine has with Russia. And the third point is important for Moscow. So there will be some sort of a line of contact between the foes and between Kherson and Kharkov, and they will start their negotiations about the disputable territories. They call all these matters disputable territories. So it's not the first attempt on the side of the West. We remember the war in Georgia when Russia was trying to conquer the part of it, and then President Sarkozy came with a piece of paper to make it legitimate. Then when Russia conquered the Crimea and Donbas, then Merkel and Hollande came to Kiev and they made it legitimate. And now Russia is conquering a significant part of Kherson region, and now leaders of France, Germany, and Italy, they want to make it legitimate. But thankfully, Ukraine has such allies as the UK and the United States. In the United States, such friends of Ukraine as Blinken and Austin, and they were saying that the goal of the war is the victory of Ukraine and keeping its territorial integrity and weakening Russia. And I think that this is the position of the UK as well, and it will be confirmed tomorrow in Ramstein military base. And they will confirm the schedule of shipment of heavy weapons, but the old Europe betrayed Ukraine. But actually, in this peace plan of Germany, Italy, and France, I was surprised with one point when they say, so all these troops will be removed, and then there will be the demilitarization process. And here I have a question. Demilitarization from whom? From Russians? Well, fine then, but then it seems that Ukrainians should move their forces as well. Well, you see, this is a concession to Putin. I think that in Moscow on the 9th of May, approximately, they had significant changes. They have a new concept of the war. The weak speech of Putin actually showed us that Putin kind of rejected those goals that he had in the beginning of the war to conquer the whole Ukraine, to occupy it. Now the goal of the war is to have Minsk 4 or 3 negotiations, and besides Donbas and the Crimea, they will have Kherson region as well. And we can say that this European initiative is actually works as it told by the Russians. You see, when I saw this voting in the Senate about this Lend-Lease package of $40 billion, and there were 11 Republicans, all pro-Trumps. And of course, the arguments were quite populist, and one of them was saying, so try to take $500 from an American, and we'll see how this support to Ukraine will look. But one message actually was quite interesting, and I think there is certain logic in it. They say, let Europe support Ukraine more because the war is on its doorsteps, and why we should invest so much in it. So why Biden cannot break down this resistance in Europe? Well, thankfully, he managed to break down this resistance in Washington. We witnessed that, remember how the whole thing started. It was the shameful summit in Geneva, and Biden, as parrot, was repeating after Putin that Zelensky has to follow Minsk conditions, and there was quite a fight among American politicians, and the point of view of Blinken and Austin won. And Biden, as I understand, now is standing for it. And he is not following advice of his security counselor, supporter of Putin, Sullivan. And now he's holding this position. So there is no time to actually re-educate Europe, and I think that the military support program should be realized. Besides, you can't really re-educate Europe. And I was also asking myself a question, why Italy, Germany, and France are so persistent in this? I just realized that. They're utterly afraid of Ukrainian victory, because victory of Ukraine completely changes the security system in Europe. As always after the World War, and this is a world war, the security system is dictated by the winners in the war, and those winners will be Ukraine, the US, and the UK. And in this system, France and Germany, they're losing their comfortable role they've been playing for years. And this greatness of France is not there anymore, and France owes to Stalin, because Stalin included France in the list of winners, and the French elite for 70 years it's playing the Kremlin Trojan horse in the West, and it's always profiteering in its grandeur de France, and this greatness is always in confronting the United States and flirting with the Kremlin. Germans, they have massive economic benefits having this relationship with the Kremlin, both as a state and some of its political leaders. I'll remind you of Chancellor Schröder. And after the victory of Ukraine, they're losing their position. They become nothing in this world. And France was profiteering in its role of intermediary between the West and the Kremlin. And the Germans, they were getting financial gains from this friendship with Kremlin. And after this, they won't be needed in this global order. So now they're kind of fighting for themselves. Putin, Scholz, Mario Draghi, and Macron, these are the anti-Ukrainian bloc today. So let's move to Washington, D.C. Biden signed Lend-Lease, not in Washington, but in Seoul. Well, you see, it's a very important detail. Biden is showing how important it is. They sent a special courier across the ocean to South Korea for Biden to sign it. It was quite theatralized in a sense. The courier was flying on special military aircraft not to lose any minute and to sign the paper of Lend-Lease to Ukraine. And I'm sure this program will be realized in a Ramstein meeting. But you see, these discussions are still continue to ship Ukraine volley fire systems or not. And we can see that even in Ukrainian media, and we see that they say that in the administration of Biden, they're afraid that Ukrainian forces will be shooting at the Russian territory. Why they're not talking about it? Or maybe the topic is so delicate they decided not to discuss it publicly. Well, it's better not to discuss it publicly. Well, see, America is an open country. They have all these briefings of General Kirby from Pentagon and representatives of the administration and the Department of State. And there is always this journalist, the same face at all the briefings over 10 years. This person asks pro-Moscow, pro-Putin questions, provoking. And they speculate that is it true that the US was given the coordinates for Ukraine to kill Russian generals and all that. So you see, this position was achieved in a significant fight. There are still Putin supporters in the administration, let alone this scandalous article in the New York Times when they repeat all those statements of Macron and Draghi when they say, Biden has to explain to Zelensky that we are not supposed to help Ukraine. But you see, they did not ship anything to Ukraine, and Ukraine is fighting for 2 months, protecting both America and Ukraine and Europe. And remember, leader of Republicans in Senate, Mitch McConnell, he said this. He said to this other senator who was saying that America is paying too much for this victory, and he said, so didn't you ask yourself a question, what it'll cost us if Ukraine will be defeated? Because it will mean that Putin will be right on the European borders, and it will be total war. So it's not a charitable case. Ukraine is de facto a leader of the free world, and it's fighting for the interests of the West and the free world. And talking about the volley fire system, they're officially in the list of Lend-Lease in the law. Remember when the law was passed and you showed the list of the weapons, and volley fire systems were in that list, and Patriot systems, and modern jet fighters. And it's just a matter of shipping them to Ukraine. You see, we touched on Biden's tour across Asia. Let's speak about it. Now he's meeting there with leaders of South Korea, Japan, Australia, and India. And China is a bit tense about it. And they said, if you're going to be talking about Taiwan, so our relationship will be completely spoiled. Don't you think that strengthening the United States' position in the Asia-Pacific region will push China closer to Russia and support Russia, or there will be an opposite effect? Well, please read my article. It's called Chinese Pathologists on Kasparov.ru website. This is my analysis of a secret report of Chinese analysts who are working for Chairman Xi Jinping, and they describe the situation in more radical terms. They say that this is the end of Russian empire, of this project. Russia shows its impotency, and they are not going to deal with such a state. And then my final question. In Ukrainian media, we see these headlines that Biden will get back to his agenda that was before the war in Ukraine. Don't you think there is a risk that Biden will put Ukraine on the back burner and will deal with his favorite issues of Asia-Pacific region? Starting with 24th of April, the visit of Blinken and Austin to Kiev, American leaders said such words and passed such laws and made such practical moves that cannot be reversed. Just remember words of Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin when he said that the goal of the war is victory over Ukraine and weakening Russia, and he said we'll keep moving heaven and earth to help Ukraine. See, such serious people, they don't waste their breath. So you are in Washington, you see opinions of Americans. So what do you think? The support for Ukraine among them is growing or flat? Well, actually, it's quite solid and on the high level. More than 75% of Americans, they support Biden in the issue of Ukraine, whether when its general rating is pretty low. And many Americans, they support that. They support the administration in helping the Ukraine. And they even think that support is not sufficient enough. But right now, you see in America, they have this political civil war. But the only method that they have a unanimous opinion, this is support of Ukraine among Republicans and Democrats. You can't even compare it with support of Lend-Lease during the Second World War. Remember, this time 11 Republicans were against it. Roosevelt back then, his ratio was 55 against 45. And in America, they think that people are kind of indifferent about the global issues. But right now, we can see that they are supporting Ukraine very much. Andrey, thank you very much for joining our program. Thank you for a very interesting talk. Andrey Piontkovsky, a Russian political analyst, was with us.